It's our pleasure now to be joined on this Capital Outlook profile with Representative Lloyd Larsen, who hails in Lander. We're in the middle of your wood shop here. You represent House District 54. Welcome.
Thank you.
Well, Representative Larsen, tell me, where are we at here? This obviously is a great hobby of yours.
It's more of a release. I don't think I'm really good at anything other than perhaps making sawdust, but it's a...
You're short selling yourself. I've seen some of your work.
I'm not really short selling myself. I can come out here and just sweep the floors and be as happy. I'm not really one to sit in the house and watch television or anything like that. So if there's some spare time, this is a good place to free your mind and smell wood.
You live on the southern edge of the Wind River Indian Reservation, and you know that I have also lived most of my life on the other side of the reservation, and you also are the chairman of the Select Committee on Tribal Relations. Lots of issues still today with tribal with the tribes that are maybe not settled. Tribal liaisons have been an issue for the state for quite some time. Why is that? Why has that been a hard program to make run smooth, if you will?
I would take one further step back from that and say a lot of the state government relations with the tribes have been difficult, and why is that? And I think it's because we oftentimes still fail to understand the fact that they're a sovereign nation, and so when we work with them, even though they're citizens of our state, but Congress, when they were put there, they were granted some special, pretty unique rights. And if I were a member of either one of those tribes, I would defend those rights as rigorously as they do. And so when our state agencies, for example, sometimes provide services of the state, they're providing those services through another government. So they'll go through the tribal councils, and it's not one, it's two. And so getting back to your question on the tribal liaison, sometimes I think we have failed to understand on the tribal side as well, perhaps on the state side, what is it that a liaison should do? Senator Case and I, a couple of years ago, kind of changed the statutes defining what a liaison done and what the responsibilities are, because we felt like the way it was set up is the state says, Eastern Shoshone tribe, here's your funding, send us a liaison. Well, it's the governor's liaison. And the purpose of that liaison is to represent the governor in how he relates to issues that are on the reservation, that exist between state agencies or the executive branch or the legislature and those tribes, or that tribe, if it's Eastern Shoshone or the Northern Arapaho. And so it really should be the governor that is selecting who he wants, just like any other member of his cabinet or his staff. So we changed that, and we have it now to where the tribes will submit 2 or 3 names, but it's the governor's job to pick who that will be. And then, I always envisioned it as something that, if you have some struggles with the Department of Family Services and the contract they have with the Northern Arapaho tribe in compliance, maybe with an audit or placement of children, or perhaps the ICWA, the Indian Child Welfare Act, something that long, that the governor could go to his liaison and say, we're struggling here. Can you go identify with the tribe and see what that issue is and come back and report to us and work with our state agencies to see how we can resolve or mitigate the problem that we've got. That's how I see the liaison working.
But funding for those positions.
But funding for those positions has always been a struggle. And I remember a couple...
And I want to interject. The priority then of those positions has been reduced.
The priority of the position, and that really came down last year to funding. And it really came down last year to the way the legislature viewed those positions. I recall the question on the floor the year before that, saying, why why do we need 2 liaisons? Won't one liaison work? And my response was why can't Colorado and Wyoming have one governor? It's
Competing interests, different interests.
Well, they're different nations.
Yes, different nations, sure.
They're different governments, and we're different states, and we wouldn't expect the same. And so you need to have a liaison that can represent the governor's interest to each tribe.
Discuss for me, Representative, if you will, the confusion that you helped mitigate to some extent in the Joint Appropriations Committee on what St. Stephen's School is.
St. Stephen's School has an interesting history. Chairman Nicholas, who chairs the JC, pointed out that when he was a young boy, it was actually a Catholic school, and he went, I think, elementary or part of his junior high school there. But then it became a Bureau of Indian Education school, like a Bureau of Indian Affairs. It's a federal school run by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Bureau of Indian Education schools have separate funding. It's federal funding, and St. Stephen's was getting all of their funding from there. It's significantly less than what the state of Wyoming funds state schools, their state K through 12 schools.
Back to the Campbell decisions. Then.
Back to the Campbell's decision. When Fremont County, an old Fremont County legislature by Dr. Harry Tipton was in the legislature, and when Fremont County, the reservation was part of his district at that time before they redistricted, he looked at St. Stephen's, says, those are Wyoming citizens too, and they're not getting the education that they really deserved. And so he came forth with a bill, and the legislature agreed with his position that they should be funded. They should have the same access to education as any other child of the state. And so what Wyoming does is they look at what the federal government, the Bureau of Indian Education, is funding St. Stephen's at, and then they supplement that to bring it up to the same level as what Wyoming schools in a geographic area are being funded.
And there were some questions then on enrollments and was there enough, et cetera, that you helped resolve?
Well, and enrollment on the reservation is an issue. We've got St. Stephen's, Arapahoe, Fort Washakie, and Wyoming Indian High School, all their own districts on that. But
let's go there for just a moment. Let's talk a little bit about consolidation. I think that you might say there's opportunities for consolidation in your county, given
you think,
given the number of school districts that there are, both on and off the reservation. Your thoughts about consolidation? When we moved to Wyoming in 1980, and I come from one of the largest geographic school districts in the lower 48 in Utah, which was the San Juan County School District, and I'd seen all of the school districts in Fremont County. I just didn't understand it. I couldn't comprehend why we would need so many districts in one county. As I've aged and gotten older, and I understand that they like the local control. I would be one that would argue that you lose local control if you would consolidate the districts. Consolidating districts does not mean that you close down schools and ship everybody to one centrally located school. It just means that you Shoshone, for example,
Shoshone
should have its own high school.
would not have to go to Riverton. Du Bois or Pavilion wouldn't have to go to Riverton or Lander, and that wouldn't be necessary. But you'd have a superintendent for the district that in Fremont County.
A business office.
A business office. And the key, I think, to success is to make sure that you have proper representation on the school board. The school board is so critical in the success of any school district. We've had some challenges with school boards in Fremont County. We've gone through a lot of good administrators in some of our school districts because of the concerns that some school boards have had. So I think it actually broadens out the base and gives a more level opinion of what the administration's doing if you have all of the schools represented. But we can't do that legislatively. That we can suggest it. That's something that really, that consolidation is a local effort. I'm not seeing a lot of appetite for that.
But what brought you to Wyoming? Why did you come here from Utah?
I'm a Southern Utah boy. My wife's a Missouri girl. We met. I went to a trade school back in Missouri. We met. My father had moved to Rock Springs to take a position with a company that serves the oil industry in the mid-'70s. When I finished up with school in Missouri, I worked for a while in St. Joe, Missouri. Had the opportunity to come here. Always wanted to get back west, and opportunity availed itself to move to Lander. My brother had already moved here. We worked for a number of years for the same company, and then my brother and father and I decided to hang out our own shingle and went into business. And in 1983, my dad lived in Rock Springs, and my brother and I lived here in Lander. We worked together every day for 30 years, and about 3 years ago we sold the business. We still work for the same company.
Oil and gas construction.
Oil and gas construction. We love Fremont County. We love Lander. You know, I fully expect to be buried in Lander. Our children were all raised here. It's a great place to be. I can't think of any other place I'd rather be.
And you made a decision to run for the Wyoming legislature.
I did.
Why?
Interesting story. My brother and I are very close. I think I have more respect for him than probably any person that I've ever been associated with. And growing up, he's 4 years my senior, and growing up he was always, we fought a lot physically, but he was always very kind to me.
So you were typical brothers?
We were typical brothers. And
my brother would agree with that.
I think so. And I always trust his judgment. And this is a long answer to your question, but I've been and always been very interested in politics, tried to be involved civically. When Representative Del McComey, who had served House District 54th remarkably for 10 or plus years, when I was in my office one day, and my brother come in and he says, Representative McComey is not going to run again. You need to run for that office. Had never really given it much of a thought. Went home that night and thought about it more and thought about it more. And, it was time to shut up and put up and
file.
And anybody that's ever done that, you feel like you're dancing on the stage naked, because you just
scared away a lot of folks from running for the legislature.
What am I doing to, and it's not a personal decision. It's certainly a decision that you make with your wife and your family, and they have been supportive. We're kind of private people.
Representative Larsen, I've said before on this program, the effort and the exhausting effort you put in on Joint Appropriations Committee cannot be understated or overstated, excuse me, and it's quite a lot of work that you had to do even to get to this point where we are today. So it's a pleasure visiting with you.
No, thank you.
On Capitol Ave.
Thank you
very much.